Your first 1 minute thing, it's gonna suck. I don't care how talented you are, it's gonna suck.
It is whether we like it or not. AI is like it's everywhere.
Just do the work. Do the work, you will get better, you will get better, you will get better.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Creators Uncut. Like always, I'm super excited for another episode. We've got a great guest for you today. His name is Mike Blum. He has a YouTube channel called Barkster Kids Songs, but he also has an animation studio called Pipsqueak Animation. Mike, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Like always, we want our viewers to get to know you and kind of what you do. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your YouTube channel, and then we can kind of dive into the animation stuff a little bit later.
Sure. So I have been in the animation industry for over 30 years. I started my career at Disney Feature Animation.
Oh, wow.
I have a kind of a weird background, and I like to sort of talk about this a little bit because, the thing with the kind of creative arts generally is that no one really cares what your background is as long as you make stuff that people find interesting. So I have a super technical background. I have an undergraduate degree in electrical and computer engineering and a graduate degree in computer science. And I started at Disney Feature Animation on the technology side, coding and then designing systems, and then supervising a whole team of software engineers, and ultimately moved over to production, kind of one of the four main supervisors on our features. But while I was there, over a period of 10 years, I sort of did these series of officially unofficial CG animated shorts that eventually got really good. I got my first agent, I got my first offer to direct professionally, and I was able to leave Disney and sort of start a whole second career, which seems, in hindsight, in some sense, a world apart from where I started. But from my perspective, it seems like a sort of perfectly natural evolution. And so,
Gotcha.
I like to just sort of remind people that it really doesn't matter what you do during your day, as long as you sort of work hard and have aspirations, and sort of can learn from your mistakes. You too can produce creative work, whether that's sort of live action or animated or whatever. It doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
So anyway, the sort of quick story is I left Disney. I did this first series for Comedy Central. Ended up getting nominated for an Emmy for that. It was supposed to be just. It was actually designed to be one of the OG sort of digital short series. It was called The Adventures of Baxter McGuire. It was created by Michael Whitehorn and Nick Bakay, who are really big folks in Hollywood. Michael Whitehorn's created 6 network shows, including King of Queens. Nick Bakay is a big writer. He does TV, does movies. They've just done a ton of stuff. And so I was expecting that just to be in, on the internet, live on the internet. And this is 2006.
Okay.
Yeah, I think something like that too. So it's a really long time ago. But it turned out the episodes turned out so well that they ended up putting them all on TV. So
Awesome.
It was great, super exciting. I went to Sundance and Annecy with that, and I thought my career would sort of take off, right? Nominated for an Emmy, have all this, an agent, and this and that and the other thing. And it just doesn't really work like that. I just didn't get any heat at all off of any of that. And ended up producing a live action feature, and which was great, a lot of work, and not a great business model, because independent feature world is, you raise the money, you make the thing, and then you pray that you can sell it afterwards. And we did, but it's just not a way of making a living. So I went back, and people were like, "Hey, why don't you do some more of that, funny animated stuff?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I can do that." And so kind of refocused, started developing some original shows, and kind of within, I don't know, a few months of that, we sold our first series, and it turned out to be a series for YouTube. And they basically just gave me a chunk of money, not a ton of money, but it was
Mm-hmm.
a real chunk of money. Um, this was um, this was again a long time ago, but it was around the time when YouTube had sort of set up this $100 million fund to sort of produce content for YouTube. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so we ended up selling a show to basically Smosh, which is a big YouTube channel, um, and they gave me the money, and I thought that I was just going to outsource the animation. I knew a lot of overseas animation studios. I kind of, sort of on and off do some overseas travel as a kind of quote unquote animation expert, and I just assumed that in one of these studios I knew in Nepal or India would come in with a bid that would be super cheap, and we just go with them. And the bids came in, and they were like not that great, and I knew how to
Mm-hmm.
do a schedule and a budget, and I made what at the time just sort of felt like a tactical decision to buy a bunch of machines and software and set up a little shop and kind of just do it in house. And that series was super fun and successful, and we got it done in the budget, under budget, on time. And then we started selling some other YouTube series to places like DreamWorks TV, and I had the mechanism to sort of do more of this, and then people started coming to us and asking us if we could do animation service work, and we're like, oh, sure, yeah, yeah, of course. And it's not an exaggeration to say that sort of just like some number of years later, you wake up and you're like, I guess I own an animation studio, but that was just like never the plan at all. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that just sort of speaks to just sort of like being open to opportunities and sort of taking the opportunities where and when you can. And so we've been in business for like 15 years, and we do work for hire. That kind of keeps the lights on, but we are always developing things. And Barkster, to kind of get back to I think the focus of this. So even though we literally have done internet series, like YouTube internet series for like 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
We've always sold them to a bigger entity who own them.
Mm.
I'm the creator, but we've never really had insight into sort of like the back end, posting the videos, how to build an audience, et cetera, et cetera. But for years, I've sort of been trying to figure out how we could sort of fund a series that we would own outright. But it's always been challenging because YouTube needs a lot of content to sort of feed the algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I think it's a misnomer that people have that, oh, I'm going to put up like 1 3-minute video and it's going to take off, and then I'm going to be rich, or I'm going to be able to make a career. Like, I mean, like maybe one in a billion people do that, but like generally, it's just not the way it works. You just have to keep grinding, grinding, grinding. So we have been trying to figure out for years, like how do we set up a pipeline that we can produce a ton of content with an incredibly small amount of money. And it really took years. It was only when we got hired to basically create um, uh, a host essentially for this Hulu
Mm-hmm.
cooking show called Secret Chef. So the idea was that there's this big, expensive, sort of shiny floor cooking show on Hulu a few years ago, and it was supposed to have no host at all. But they realized they still needed some kind of quote unquote entity or host to sort of like drive the narrative forward, to interact with the contestants. And they had this idea of creating a sort of like 90s esque, sort of Nintendo ish talking chef hat,
Mm.
to sort of like be on set and guide the contestants through. And just by the nature of what they needed production wise, and also just the budget, we realized that none of our pipelines were really going to work. And so we looked for a motion capture solution, and ended up sort of focusing on Adobe's Character Animator, which is sort of a very underused piece of the Adobe suite.
Mm.
And we had a lot of success with that show. They were thrilled. And that was sort of like the sort of the missing piece that sort of set my mind in motion. I was like, oh, what if we use this 2D motion capture to produce kids animated content? And from
Mm.
there, the idea for Barkster Kids Song, not just the idea really, it was sort of like the mechanism by which I could sort of imagine how we could create just a ton of content really inexpensively. And from there, it became okay. I can basically now produce animated content at basically 5 times the speed that our sort of lowest price animation pipeline could produce content. So we use Flash or
Hmm.
Animate, as it's called now, as our sort of like low end solution. We can produce animation like 5 times faster than that, but there's still a matter of cost. And so, again, feel free to interject here if any of this gets boring, but just to sort of like try to keep in mind your initial question here, the the key thing that I still had to figure out was like, how are we going to still afford to produce just tons and tons of content, even if it's cheap? That still adds up when you're talking about what we realized was going to be hours of content that we would need in order to really
Hmm.
try to establish this channel. Um, and the way Hollywood works is when you sell a show, whether it's a YouTube show or a show for Cartoon Network, and we've experienced doing all this stuff for Disney, when you set up a deal with them, you are basically selling them 100% of your IP.
Hmm.
They own it. Even if they do nothing with it, even if it goes nowhere, you no longer own it. It's just the way it works. So my idea was taking this pipeline, which is this really inexpensive pipeline, and then inverting the business. Instead of going like, hey, I'm going to sell basically 100% of this IP before we even get started, I said, you know what? Let me find a core set of creative team that I would give a very large percentage of the IP to. So, much like Hollywood, I'd still be able to keep a good chunk as well,
Hmm.
and everyone would have sort of skin in the game. That no one would sort of be paid up front, just like we're not paid up front. We'd all be producing this content, just with our own labor, and that was a way that we could produce a lot of content over a long period of time with sort of minimal expense. Now, it's not free because
Mm.
my part of the equation is still it still costs money. I still have to hire board artists and people to design the characters and props, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But it drastically reduced the amount of labor that I needed to pay for to sort of keep this channel going.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess just to kind of briefly sum that up, so you started as like a coding engineer and then moved through like your animation studio, which in turn led you to kind of innovate some ideas to make costs cheaper. And that's kind of how you started the Barkster Kids Song channel.
Yeah,
Is that like a pretty brief summary?
yeah, that's a good brief summary. Exactly. So again, even though we've literally been making content for YouTube for 20 years, this is the first time that we've like owned the product of our labor, so to speak.
Mm,
And
gotcha.
that's exciting for us. Now, the flip side of that is that we at this point we think of Barster Kid Songs as really just a development project for us. So we have development
Hmm.
projects that sort of span the gamut from these sort of like preschool. So Barster Kid Song is a preschool social emotional learning song based channel. So we
Hmm.
go all the way from there to TV shows that we develop for preschool, Bridge, which is considered like kids age 4 to 7,
Hmm.
older kids 6 to 11, um, Bridge again, sort of like young, sort of 11 to 14, family and adult shows, and also feature films. And so we have projects that sort of span the gamut. And most of those are sort of being developed. Well, it's actually not true. We have a variety of different ways that we develop these shows, but a lot of them are still developed the way we would, 15 years ago, designed to sort of either sell to a studio or go into a co-production with a sort of other entity to sort of get the show funded. It's a much bigger budget. It's also much harder to sort of get set up, more so now than ever, with with all the problems that Hollywood is seeing, and sort of the streamers have wrought with kind of overproduction and not being able to sustain a business model. Um,
Yeah.
but but we still do that because we want to spread our risk around. And we think of Barkster Kids Songs as just another one of our development projects where the end result, the end product, is not just a script, a pitch deck, maybe a teaser trailer, which is sort of the sort of final output of a typical development project. And instead,
Hmm.
the final output is final animation. And we don't have any gatekeepers, so we don't have to like wait for studios to take a pitch and go through a development process, which is endless and really fraught. We're just doing it, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that with persistence and with the skill of our whole team, that we can build this development project into a real brand that will become a business in and of itself.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. I want to ask a question kind of about animation. It may be risky because I don't know that much about animation. But before I do, do you do you like oversee all of this, or are you like in the nitty gritty, like you're animating as well?
I am not animating, but
Oh, okay,
I am
okay,
not animating. I am in the nitty gritty. I am the producer.
okay.
I for if you're talking specifically of Barkster Kids Songs. So the way it sort of works is, for that particular project, is we have sort of like a management team, the sort of like core
Hmm.
stakeholders, who all own the piece of the IP, and we kind of make decisions together. I'm sort of like I'm the one that sort of like the sort of, I don't know, happy wrangler or something. I'm sort of always sort of pushing things forward, trying to get consensus on whatever we do. It's a
Hmm.
great, like an amazing group of people. We've like never had one argument or disagreement. We're now like 3 years into doing this. So it's just a super fun group of people. I look forward to, talking to them every week. But my role for that project is, I'm the sort of chief cheerleader. I'm the one that's sort of like coming up with strategy. I'm producing all of the shorts, and I'm directing all of them.
Hmm.
But we have a composer and a lyricist, and an animator, and board artists and artists. So it's a fairly small team, but we each do our jobs, our sort of separate jobs. There's
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, pretty good delineation there.
Gotcha. Okay. So if I asked you a specific question about animation, would you know, like, maybe how to answer it?
Of course,
I don't
I've been
know.
doing this for 30 years,
Um,
so yeah, I can answer. I can answer anything you can throw at me.
okay, okay. So you mentioned you had a coding background, and I'm curious, is there any coding involved in animation? Because I dabble in After Effects, and I know there's like, I guess, expressions. I don't know if it's considered coding, but there's expressions you can do to kind of animate certain objects a certain way.
Sure.
And I'm wondering, if is there like coding involved for like large scale like TV shows or animation bits? I think that would be helpful, like, if you could just, like, copy and paste, like, some code for some basic stuff, but I don't know. Is that a thing?
It is. It depends on sort of what kind of production you're doing and what kind of, what you want the code to do. But
Mhm,
certainly, like at Disney Feature Animation, we had a team of, there were probably 75 or 100 people, in the technology group, that were all writing various pieces of software to help animators, produce the content. Some of those features, actually, Disney ended up sort of selling back to some of the big vendors, and they've become part of, like core animation packages that everyone in the industry uses. And some they sort of kept internal. Some they kept internal until there was a third party package that did something that was better. Um,
mhm,
and some of that are sort of standalone programs. Some of that is sort of like integrated into the tools themselves via various kinds of scripts. And then there's all kinds of external tools to sort of help production management, to sort of like, manage the flow of data itself. And the bigger studios can afford to bring in either engineers, or they call technical directors, who sort of help to sort of write the tools or pieces of glue, that sort of allow all of these various applications and tools to work together. Smaller studios are generally not employing those kinds of people.
Hmm.
We, for instance, I've never hired a technical person to sort of write anything. Most of the stuff that we keep in house is relatively sort of simple pipelines. We do 2D and 3D, but we do a lot more 2D in house, and there's just no reason to write any tools. They're like everything that we need to do is sort of encapsulated in these sort of like big third-party packages that we use day in and day out. But to answer your question, yeah, people use. There are technical people that are involved in many ways in all kinds of animation pipelines,
Hmm.
but they tend to be sort of more mid-size and large corporations rather than small independent studios.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. I was just curious. And uh, yeah, I don't know that much about animation, so I can't really ask much further questions beyond that. But this episode, hopefully, maybe someone who's interested in animation might be this information might be helpful. So for you, say someone wanted to start an animation channel, um, is there like tools that you would recommend or strategies you would recommend for someone who might be interested in starting their own YouTube channel?
Yeah, for sure. So again, I think the key is, especially if like you're small, you're independent, you're trying to sort of figure this out. The same rules that I just sort of laid out are going to apply to you as well. You need to be able to produce a lot of animation in order to sort of yeah, build an audience.
Hmm.
But things do not have to be perfect looking. Like we do not try the stuff that we make for our channel. It's not our best animation work by any means. We're trying to make like we're trying to put the effort into making these songs that are like really great songs, and then a message, this sort of social emotional learning message that is really going to resonate not just with kids but with parents as well. Like we really are trying to build trust.
Hmm.
We're trying to like sort of put good in the world. So we put a lot of energy into that. We don't like obsess with tons of of things that I would be obsessed with if it was like higher budget, yeah, for a client or just sort of like our sort of more expensive projects. We let a lot more stuff go through creatively because it's just not important when you're sort of trying to appeal to a 2 to 4 year old, and that's partly why we chose the kind of channel that we did. Is from like a
Okay.
visual standpoint, simple is good, and so I guess like my advice would be like pick pick a. It doesn't have to be kids, but pick a sort of like visual style that can be implemented inexpensively. So where like the sort of like quality, quote unquote, quality of animation can be simple and it does not distract from what it is you're trying to get across. And I've seen adult shows as well as kid shows use these kinds of ideas in different ways. In terms of tools, I'm a big fan of Character Animator. I'm a big fan of Unreal. Someone who's actually become a friend, who I think you interviewed recently, Corey.
Hmm.
His Silly Crocodile channel, like he was really inspiration for us in figuring out, like, well, yeah, we can do this. We can actually, if Corey can do it with him by himself, we with a small team can figure out how to do it as well. So Unreal, Character Animator, I think are two really great tools that are pretty simple to learn, and allow an individual or a very small team to produce a lot of animation quickly and like good animation.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think both of those are really interesting things to look at. There are certainly other tools. I just think that um, they require sort of more work. I have very mixed feelings about AI. Obviously, there's a ton of people who are using Gen AI to generate animation.
Yeah.
I have very mixed and subtle feelings about this. I'm not a fan of generative AI that is using scraped data sets to train their models.
Hmm.
I feel like that really is just kind of ripping off other artists. There are a lot of tools that use ethically trained, and I'm going to put ethically trained in quotes because they do it in a variety of ways that some are more good than others. But the
Yeah.
idea there is that the data sets, they are licensing them, and I feel
Oh,
completely different about generative AI that's been trained on data that has been um, properly licensed.
that makes sense.
So yeah, so I think you know um, everyone can make their own decisions. My own personal decision is we're not really interested in AI unless and until these sort of ethically trained AI models are available and are also the sort of pipelines around them have sort of steadied out enough where we can put together a team around them, know what our costs are, and know how long it's going to take. And I'll be honest, like I'd be surprised for like us personally, for the kinds of things that we're doing, whether AI, we could do AI shorts or videos that are faster or cheaper. Our production costs are so low right now. Yeah, it'd be kind of hard to imagine.
Yeah.
But you know, whatever. Everyone has different skill sets. I don't want to. I don't want to say that there aren't not other ways of doing it. And certainly, I'm seeing lots of stuff that people are creating with AI that, yeah, I mean, like visually is pretty cool. If you can figure out how to like direct it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you brought up AI. I also have mixed feelings about it. I don't know if this is the same with animation, but I've tried, some generative AI for like regular video because I'm a video editor and that's kind of what I do. So occasionally I'll need like a shot that like they don't have any B-roll for or anything like that. But the problem I have right now, and this could change in the future really quickly, is it just doesn't like feel right. It's like not 100% accurate. It like looks AI. So I don't know. Is that kind of the same with animation? Like, does it feel and look kind of like AI made, or is it more subtle because it's an animation?
I think it depends. It's certainly all these models are getting better and better. Like, sometimes week over week, certainly month over month. And so I think it's risky to make like absolute statements based on where things are right now because they're
Hmm.
almost certainly going to change. And I've certainly seen um, both live action and animation that is compelling visually that I'd say most people are not going to be able to distinguish. I think for me, it's a question of a few things. If you're moving beyond just the sort of ethics of the models that are ethically trained versus not, like let's put that aside for a second.
Hmm.
I think there are issues about like um, how directable it is. And we have just not found in animation that it's very directable. I have an idea in my head, and it's very hard to get the computer to, these models to actually give you what's in my head, even when you give them a sketch of
Yeah.
what you want. Um, uh, I think it is near impossible right now if you're trying to produce something that's actually unique looking to get these models um, to do what you want without sort of doing a second layer of it's called sort of LoRa, LORA or RRA, of basically training, taking all of your sort of creative work and sort of doing a second level of training on the AI models with your look. Without doing that, it's nearly impossible to get a new look out of any of these AI models. And in order to do this LoRa training, you need both a sort of certain level of technical expertise and time and money to make it work. And we personally have just not invested that time and money at this point. Um, yeah, for a whole variety of reasons. So
Yeah.
I think that you run into problems if you do not put enough time and energy and really rethink your whole pipeline. Like the way that you generate AI footage is just different from a pipeline perspective than what you would do um, with sort of more traditional techniques.
Hmm.
And the same thing applies, like whether it's animation or live action. Like, anyone that's used to sort of like how you would create a live action short, it's the same exact thing. It's just different. The process by which you sort of generate, sort of AI live action is just a completely different process. Um, so you have to sort of, and honestly, like the processes themselves are still being worked out. So sort of like where we are, personally speaking, is we are what I call being situationally aware. We're sort of like really keeping on top of what these various models are doing, how they're working, doing some just like preliminary investigations. But because we are like a small company, we're really probably not going to invest much time and energy until these tools are sort of integrated into sort of third-party packages that our artists know. Because I don't really have the inclination to, you know, invent or reinvent or learn wherever the AI pipelines are developing. Much rather have those tools be integrated into tools that we're already using.
Hmm.
In the same way, like for editing, I don't know if you edit in Premiere, but you see
Hmm.
these AI tools that are being integrated into Premiere. Well, now that they're there, you already know Premiere. Now it's just like another widget that you're learning, and it
Yeah.
makes it much easier for you to sort of like incrementally figure out how to incorporate AI into your workflow. And by the way, Adobe has Firefly, so it is a sort of while it's not like the best ethically trained model, it is a licensed model, and so that's sort of what we're waiting for. We're waiting for these tools to sort of be integrated into more and more into these third party packages that we use day in and day out, and then sort of take advantage of them incrementally as that happens. And yeah, that's kind of how we're viewing it.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I like how you said situationally aware. Like, I'm also aware of like the different models and stuff. But I also find it super frustrating, like when you have an image in your head and it just doesn't quite get it.
Yeah.
um,
Now, on the flip side, we have found it incredibly useful for like kind of brainstorming ideas or
yeah.
doing some like early visual development where we're not like it's really just to sort of get other people excited about our ideas. And there, I find AI to be sort of a shortcut that we just wouldn't really be able to afford to do using traditional tools. So,
Mhm.
very specifically, doing sort of 3D uh, pre-visualization is a very expensive process if you kind of go through the traditional steps. There's just like a lot of very highly paid people that you need to have work for a long time to develop anything. But we have been using it as a shortcut to take our own sort of 2D artwork and sort of upscale it to feel CG-ish, that
Mhm.
just gives a flavor to people so they kind of understand, oh, this is kind of what it would look like in 3D without saying this is exactly what it's going to look like. And I think you see more and
Yeah.
more of those kinds of uses in Hollywood um, taking place of um, like both in live action and animation. You do in live action, you would very often put together these reels, which were basically just like pulling clips from other TV shows or movies to try to give a vibe of what
Mhm.
your idea for your film is. A lot of those are getting replaced with these sort of like AI-ish enhanced sort of reels
Oh,
that
interesting.
again sort of can still give you the vibe, but maybe it's a little bit more closely aligned with what the creators are thinking about, without saying like, "Oh, this is literally what the show is going to look like."
Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting a little off topic of YouTube itself, but yeah, just
No, I think
yeah.
it's good to talk about this kind of stuff because it is whether we like it or not, AI is like in our it's
It is,
everywhere.
it is here. I
So,
think it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle, but I do think it's important for artists to push back and kind of at least be making decisions based on what's real out there. And I think
yeah.
putting your head in the sand and just sort of saying, well, it's here, so I'm just going to use everything. I mean, again, I don't make any people can do what they want. My own personal line is let's be careful how we do that, because uh, it's for me it's a little bit like um, early days. If you remember, like Napster, it's a long time ago, but like Napster was this original sort of song file sharing site where basically they just stole songs, stuck them up on the web, and allowed people to download them. And that the Napster got shut down. Like it was declared,
Mm-hmm.
you know, stealing. But from that, services like Rhapsody and iTunes and then Spotify sort of sprouted up that essentially in various ways licensed that those songs, whether they were
Mm-hmm.
with the artist directly or really more through their publishers, and it allowed for artists to actually make some money back for people listening to those songs. So likewise, I feel like as an artist and someone who hires artists, like I don't want to be shooting myself or all of my friends and colleagues in the head by saying, oh yeah, it's fine to just go and like steal all this stuff without compensating the folks who actually came up with all these original designs and artwork. So um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a kind of like, it's a sort of nuanced take that doesn't work very well on the internet, but that's kind of where I'm at.
No, I think that totally makes sense, especially with animation. And I just want to add one more thing, and then we can kind of move on from AI. But you mentioned earlier that it's kind of hard to get a unique look with these AI models. Like they all kind of look the same. And so I would just like anyone who's listening who's, you know, thinking about using AI for their YouTube channel, that's something to consider. Like if everyone used AI, then everything would look the same. And it also, I feel like it kind of skips the learning steps. Like I went to school for video editing. Like I learned how to like the proper ways to cut for a story and pacing and that kind of stuff. And I feel like if you just jump straight to video editing, you don't learn the basics. And if it doesn't work with the AI, then like you don't know how to fix it.
That's 100% true. Yeah, I think you still need. I'm very like I'm able to sort of. I feel like I'm able to use AI pretty effectively because I know a lot of stuff, and so when it's wrong
Yeah,
or it gives me sort of bad results, I'm able to sort of like push back and be like, "You're being stupid." Like, no, that's
yeah. But
wrong.
like the general person doesn't know that.
Yeah, it doesn't know that. They just accept it, and that's across the board. Whether you're talking about the creative uses of these AIs, or just got all these kids who are thinking that they're learning to write by having ChatGPT write an essay, but they're not learning anything.
Yeah,
They're not
yeah.
learning to write without actually having like using your brain to go and construct. Let's bring it back to the creative arts, like a story, how a three act structure works, how to know when it is and when it isn't, like without actually going
Mhm.
through and doing it yourself without the help of this crutch. You're never going to learn. You're never going to know what's
Yeah,
good from what's bad. So I feel like these AIs are much more helpful when you actually already have the experience to know what's working and what's not, that's being spat back at you.
definitely. I completely agree. So awesome. Well, thanks, Mike. This episode has been awesome. I've got one more question for you, and we kind of ask this to all of our guests. But has there been a mistake you've made along your career or journey that you've learned from that might be beneficial to our listeners and watchers?
I made a lot of mistakes, but let me see if I could isolate it down. I think that would be relevant to your audience. I would say that like when I first started making my first short, I'll be honest, like if I'm looking back, I was scared. Like I didn't know. I've never directed anything. I never written anything. I was scared to sort of make that first step, and so I obsessed over details that were just not that important. So um, uh, the first short that I did, and I can give you very specifically, like it had an olive oil bottle in it.
Hmm.
And in my head, I'm like, oh, I remember growing up, there was this bottle of olive oil that it needs to look like that. But I couldn't, I'm not an artist, and I couldn't remember exactly. And I probably spent 6 months going to like every sort of flea market and antique store in Burbank, like all the time, obsessed. I'm going to find it because it's critical that I find that particular bottle, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And after 6 months, I'm like, I never found it. And I was like, stupid. Like, just design something, just design something that's going to work for the story. And it really, once I sort of like realized that, there were lots of other things that I kind of realized. I'm like, don't obsess about details that are not important. It's much more important to sort of make decisions and move forward, than to sort of convince yourself that like this particular thing is the most critical. And I think that's even more so for YouTube. Like, people who are obsessed about like, getting their first 1 minute thing perfect and missing the point. Your first 1 minute thing, it's going to suck. I don't care how talented you are, it's going to suck. Put it out, do better the next time. Do better the next time after that. Do better the next time after that. And I'll be honest, like, you actually do hear this kind of advice when you look around YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
of basically, you hear this advice like, make each video 1% better. I think that's basically good advice. I think early on you can do a lot more. Like, if you've never made anything before, your each successive video is probably 10, 20, 30% better. Just concentrate on making, putting stuff out there, developing a sense of taste and improving time after time after time, not getting obsessed about every little detail. It's just like, I feel like people always ask me like, "Oh, are you an artist?" I'm like, I always feel like I'm really, I don't really quite know how to answer that, because like I'm a crappy drafts person,
Mm-hmm.
but I write, I produce, I direct, whatever it is that I am. I'm a creative person, and I just think that it is, creative people, even ones that are super talented. It is muscle memory. It is, you get better by actually doing, and so
Mm.
whatever you call yourself, you will get better by just doing the thing over and over and over again. And I am, whatever you call me now, I am much better than when I started, probably 30 years ago. And I just try to keep that in mind, each and every day. Just do the work. Do the work. You will get better. You will get better. You will get better. There are always going to be people who are above you, who are like, you can look at and they're like, man, they're better at me than doing X, Y, and Z, or they're more successful or whatever. And they're always, if you keep doing it, there are also going to be people who are like kind of below you on the sort of ladder of like, success, or um, uh, 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 um, like artistic, skill. But you'll just be surprised if you just keep doing, you keep climbing that ladder. And like I said, you will always have people above you. And as you do it, you're also going to be able to look back and you'll be able to go like, hey man, there's a lot of people who can't do it as well as I can. And you just got to keep climbing. You have to be like, accept where you are right now, try to keep climbing up to get better and better. And that's how I think people become successful, or give themselves a chance to be really successful. Um, yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, that definitely did. I really like that. That is solid advice, and I hope our listeners and watchers remember that.
yeah. And again, I say very, very specifically, like, you could always to go like just a closing statement. Like, you can always say, oh man, I wish I would start a YouTube channel. Go start a YouTube channel. Like, the
Mhm.
earlier you plant that tree, the more time you give it to grow. So, you can always lament, like, I should have done it 6 months ago, or a year ago, or 5 years ago. All right, that time has passed. Plant your tree. Start growing your tree. Start watering it by like making stuff. And yeah, that's what I sort of encourage everyone to do. And then just use their own skills to figure out. Everyone brings a different set of skills to the table. They're not going to be mine. They're not going to be yours. They're going to be some combination of a bunch of different things. Know what your strengths are. Surround yourself with people who, can complement those strengths. Work as a team. Might be a team of one, might be more, but concentrate and just, find a way of making, a lot of content, uh, as quickly as you can, improving each time that you do it.
Very well said. Thank you for sharing that, Mike, and thanks for being on this episode. If people want to reach out to you specifically, what's the best way for them to do that?
Man, I'm an open book. You can email me, or email the studio, info at pipsqueakanimation.com. pretty easy. I am all over the interwebs. You can go to our website, pipsqueakanimation.com. You can find us on YouTube at Barkster Kids Songs, Barks as in Sam, Ter, Kids Songs, plural. If you search for Mike Blum animation, you will find me. People have questions. Feel free to reach out. I'm an open book.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mike, for being on this show. And thanks to our listeners and watchers for checking out this episode. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, where we talk to real people about real content. And just a plug for ourselves, if you need help making your videos on YouTube, check us out at creatorlux.com, and we will see you in the next one.